Welcome to the SIWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. We're here again with our guest host Narsingh, and we thought we'd have a conversation on becoming a leader in digital marketing. So we know that you have a background in marketing, doing some work in marketing right now, and we want to have a bit of a conversation on how would someone who is a young grad focus on, what would they focus on, what would they do in order to first of all get into digital marketing and then transition into a leader. So how's it going today, Narsingh?
Going great. Thanks a lot again, Luki, for having me. Pretty excited to share some of my stories and, help people figure out the next steps to unlocking, leadership within marketing.
Why don't we dive into a little bit about your background? So some of what you were doing in marketing before, during, and after graduation, and how is that transition? And maybe we'll dive into like, what did you learn at school? What was and wasn't useful? So let's start a little bit with your background. So how did kind of marketing enter your life?
For sure. Yeah. So I actually went to University of Toronto. I did my BBA there. Originally, I think I started off in an economics stream, but quickly realized that wasn't the right path for me. I had a very interesting first experience with marketing, where we were learning about branding, the power of branding, so on and so forth. And then once I started to understand the breadth of just how large marketing can be in terms of the impact that it has to within an organization, was really the precursor for me to switch my streams and get into marketing as my main specialist.
And all of that was within a
think
course, right? You were learning this in kind of like the academic context of all that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So this was during the first year of my university, where I'd taken one of the marketing courses, and it immediately kind of spoke to me. Just more so than the promotional side of it, it was really how having customers at the heart of the process, being able to work on many things beyond what you would typically think marketing is about. So let's say pricing or product management or building a brand, or working on the customer service side of things. So if you just think of all the spokes that come out of marketing, I was pretty enamored by the possibilities. So that was sort of the initial motivation for me to switch to that. Another, I guess, important part of it was I was always fond of psychology, and I ended up doing a major in psychology during university as well. So it was kind of like a dual degree, if you will. But I think that just complemented the marketing stream so well, because it allowed me to take those skills and knowledge, but also the scientific part of psychology, such as running experiments and knowing what it's like to do research, so on and so forth.
I think for a lot of folks who have an interest in business and then they have an interest in psychology, well, one way is to go to something like HR, because that's kind of like people psychology, and obviously another way is going to marketing, where you can influence people to make decisions and things like that. So if we talk a little bit about your schooling, so as you went into there, what did you find was useful for you to get into digital marketing? What was very relevant and helpful, or what was maybe a little less relevant?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, as a marketer, you typically, so for example, you end up learning the 4 Ps, right? So that's your pricing, packaging, so on and so forth. But, really from a digital perspective, you don't always have the opportunity, for example, to be involved from a packaging perspective. Now, maybe metaphorically, things like user experience, user interface, design, etc., still give you access to some similar skill sets, but you're not really designing the way packaging is going to look on a shelf store. So in that respect, maybe that was not as relevant. But I think what's interesting about digital is that it still gives you access to allow yourself to work in some of those traditional areas. So for example, let's say if you have access to an e-commerce store, theoretically, you could do, let's say, price sensitivity analysis on that, and therefore have that contribution back to the product team in terms of what the pricing should be for certain products. So I think maybe that's an example of how you could still make those things relevant. But I think probably for me, one of the things that ended up helping me the most from a digital career perspective was funny enough, it was actually my psychology background, because that's where I really learned how to do research. So what does it mean to build a hypothesis, and what does that framework look like? What is the difference between an independent and a dependent variable? So how do you set up an experiment? How do you do the statistical analysis to derive conclusions from that experiment, which has now become a very integral part of how you do data-driven marketing. A lot of it, the buzzwords, A/B testing, et cetera, it all roots from the scientific methodology. So to me, that was actually super helpful, because when I went into digital, you essentially do A/B testing in almost every single discipline under digital, and having that data mindset, having the statistical mindset, having the critical thinking mindset of being able to come up with these experiments was probably something that really helped me catapult in the beginning.
Interesting. So as you talk a little bit about some of the critical skills, so you talk about, well, critical thinking and analysis and things like that. But when I hear folks talk about marketing, and I'm not a marketing by any means, folks will often talk about things like copywriting, graphic website design, analytics, and funnels and newsletters. So are those like key skills that you need to learn before you get into digital marketing, or is that something that you pick up on the fly, or like what's your thoughts in terms of some of those other fundamental areas that you need to pick up?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's interesting because digital has exploded since I started my career to what it's become now. It's probably one of the most exponentially fastest growing functions in many businesses, right? So this theme of digital transformation is still very critical in a lot of different industries. So I would say in the past, having your fundamental marketing skills is something that would be enough. But I think because the streams have become so mature, where let's say being an SEO person, you can have a whole career out of that now, right? Before it was one of these supplementary things that we were still learning. Google was still growing, the algorithms were still developing, so we were all kind of learning as companies were maturing. But now SEO has become a very deep discipline. So I think there are some fundamental things that people can work on. For example, understanding content marketing. So theoretically, email marketing might fall under that, but knowing what it means to build content, how does that impact a website, having some basic understanding around design, etc. I think you talked about analytics. I think that's probably one of the most important things for marketing today, is being able to analyze large sets of data and being able to derive some meaning out of that, right? Because that was the missing gap, from a marketing perspective. In the past, you didn't have access to this reciprocal data feedback loop that you now have today almost immediately. You can launch an advertising campaign today, and probably by the end of the day, if it's performing well or not. And before, you have to wait months or weeks, or at least weeks, if not months. So I think those are some key skills that people can probably learn today, before even graduating. And if I'm not wrong, these courses are starting to be offered as well at a secondary institution level.
So what I took from that is there are a few fundamental concepts and skills that are evergreen in kind of the human psychology and how to influence and things like that. But there are things that are evolving rapidly, like SEO. In theory, could evolve or change tomorrow, be it with like the metaverse or something like what's SEO in a 3D virtual world, that sort of thing, right? So that parts could change, but the fundamentals like content marketing or analytics, you still have to figure out like what it is that people want, and figure out like, now that you know what they want, like how do you garner insights in that? So that's quite interesting. And in terms of like resources to get these skills, so you mentioned that some of them you probably acquired at school, but there are probably a bunch of them that you learned on the job or after the fact. So what are some of the best resources out there that folks could use to kind of learn any of these, call it content marketing, analytics, or SEO, or whatever it is? And I don't know if you have to go through every single one of them, but maybe at a high level, some of the bigger skills that are needed for a career in digital marketing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll go through the list off the top of my head, but you've got things like email marketing, and sort of the evolution of that would be automation, automating email. There's obviously social media. There's the CRM side of things, so really building more complex structures once you have the data, acquired. There's the SEO, there's the paid media and advertising. We talked about content, the design, the UX, and then, really just being tech savvy, because one of the things that marketing teams use a lot now is tools,
Right.
lots of them, right? There's like analytical tools, there's dashboards, there's, all these different tools that you need to have that skill to be able to navigate, 5 to 10 tools easy. But in terms of acquiring some of these skills and really just the knowledge set, starting off with the internet, right? So YouTube, rich source, blogs. There's multiple different bloggers out there. For example, in the SEO world, there's Neil Patel. There's this website called Backlinko run by Brian Dean. So there's some thought leaders out there in the space that have very, very rich information out there that really if you were to go through that, you'd have a really solid understanding of these concepts. But besides that, there are also other certification programs, right? Again, some of these are offered in educational institutions, but currently, for example, I'm teaching at BrainStation, which is a digital upskilling education management company. And for a relatively affordable price, a lot of students are now using that as a way to get a certification. They get a full-blown digital marketing, deep dive within a 10-week time period, and you're really able to use those fundamental skills going into the workforce. So there's some of these other paid options out there, but I think starting off with the free tools like blogs, videos, etc., is probably the way to start.
Right. So what I took from that is, you want to call it dip your toe into the water before you get completely wet. So starting with some of the free resources, the YouTubes, the bloggers, and stuff like that, and basically seeing, okay, is this something of interest to you? And then if it is, then maybe go and invest in some of the certifications, some of these kind of like boot camp programs that are out there. And then obviously if you want to go a little bit more into post-secondary, you can do that. And that's obviously if you've already graduated. If you're still in school and trying to figure things out, it's a slightly different path in there. So yeah, seems like a good option.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. So if you were to recommend someone to, well, let's say someone from high school, what would be the best way for them to get into digital marketing? Would you just recommend them to kind of jump on in and do kind of what we said, or is there a different way? And then maybe take it where like you're in high school, and then might ask in university versus like a career switcher, because those three might be slightly different recommendations. So if we started high school, what would you recommend to someone grade 12, like wide-eyed, and bushy-tailed, and wanting to make their marketing mark in the world? What would you recommend them to do?
I think the beauty of digital is that it's so accessible, right? Like you could start your own social media page and learn how social media works yourself. You could set up your own goals, like increasing my followers, increasing my video watch time, increasing the number of likes that I get on my posts, and you can actually learn all these things yourself. The same thing with building a website. It's not as hard as it used to be. A lot of these things are plug and play now. You can just move modules around, build your own website. You can learn your own SEO that way. You can learn how analytics works that way. So I think that's such an easy way for anyone, whether you're in high school, whether you currently have a full-time job, to start to expose yourself to some of these basic, principles of digital marketing by just exposing yourself to these tools that are now so accessible. It could even be creating like a food Instagram profile page, and then seeing how far you can take that, and you might find yourself becoming an influencer within a few months' time. So I think it's so easy to kind of expose yourself to digital these days that I would probably recommend one of the ways is just to do it. Besides that, like I said, there's tons of content out there that can definitely support you as well. So.
And would you say it matters whether or not you're younger or more experienced in your career, or is it, as you said, so accessible that really high school, university grad, or like 5-10 years into your career, it's kind of a relatively equal playing field?
I would say so. See, the only thing I would say, like the fundamental need of being able to be a good digital marketer is being okay with technology. Right, because everything hinges on applications and software and data, etc. So if you're uncomfortable learning new tools, if you're uncomfortable seeing new dashboards and wrapping your head around that, again, this is technically you would assume that if you're younger, you'd be good at that. And, if you're maybe finishing your career, it might be a little bit more difficult if you're used to specific ways. But honestly, to me, I think as long as you're comfortable with just technology in general, like these things are fairly easy.
Right. So it sounds like you're at the camp where you want to just dive in there. So start your own blog, whether it's or YouTube
Exactly.
or Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is that's kind of trending these days, and see if you can grow it, and then kind of use the resources we mentioned. So the YouTubes and other blogs and other folks that are saying, oh, you might want to do this, or post at this time, hashtag this and that, or whatever the new things that are there. And if you feel that you're not necessarily getting enough from those resources, or you need more structure, maybe sign up for a course because some people learn better on their own, where they can just figure it out. Some people like the structure of like, come in here on this time and whatever, and then we'll handhold you and then answer questions and things like that. So it's really up to folks and their different situations in terms of which one is best for you. And then it sounded like that one of the best ways is to really experiment and test, right? So I think you mentioned a little bit on the analytics of like trying this and then trying that and seeing which ones works better. Are there any kind of recommendations you have in terms of like that experimentation process? Are there like certain things that like work a little bit better or a little more challenging on the marketing side?
Yeah, from an experimentation perspective, I think the premise is that you're working off of the numbers that you're seeing, right? So, one of my students, for example, in class was working on her TikTok channel. Wanted to understand, what do these metrics mean? Is it good that I'm growing X percentage every month? Should I be aiming for something higher? And I think once you start to work with these numbers, you yourself start to figure out what makes sense and doesn't, right? And then you start to, connect the dots from there. So I would say whatever area you're exposing yourself into, whether it's maybe you're starting a blog, maybe you're starting a social media page, so on and so forth. Try to keep the data side, somewhere in the back of your head. So if you're starting a blog, look at your monthly visitors, for example. Look at how long they're spending on your blog. Look whether they're interacting with other blogs. Look at what's popular. Use that as a way to build more content. Maybe you can start to promote that on social media now, see if that's driving more traffic, right? So there's the data is the key part of the story, right? It's just kind of using that as a way to guide your next steps. And if you're running any true experiments, I think the one thing that I'll just say is where people make the most mistakes is try to isolate the variable that you're trying to test, right? So let's say at the very simplest form, if you're running an experiment with copy, you can have two different titles, but everything else in the ad stays the same. So that's, running a true A/B experiment where you only have one variable that's changed. Because sometimes people will have two different creatives that are fundamentally different, and then you don't really know, is it, was it this extra person that I added here? Was it the color change that I did here? Was it the title that I changed? Because you have 5 different things that are happening in these two scenarios. So I guess to answer your experimentation question, it's more along the lines of keeping it very strict from a variable point of view.
Cool. Sounds good. So I think we gave folks a bit of guidance on how to get into digital marketing. So a lot of it is just throwing yourself in there, and then there might be a particular area that you're particularly interested in, be it SEO or websites or design or copy or newsletters or this or that. So there's so many different things to explore. But as you kind of mature in the marketing world, how would you say you progress into kind of the leader role, right? So the episode was talking about becoming a leader in digital marketing. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, maybe I'd break it down in terms of 4 pillars. Okay. So let's say the number one thing for any leadership role is the strategy side of things. So really being able to understand, first of all, how does the business work? Mm-hmm. How does the business work within the industry? How does the industry work? How does the industry work in comparison to other industries? So there's having a macro and micro view of marketing, of digital, etc., and how it kind of relates to the overall big picture of the way things are running. With that strategy comes the vision piece, right? So having some sort of vision of where you're trying to take the marketing function further. I think the second pillar would be of data and analytics from a digital marketing point of view. Again, that's what has fundamentally changed marketing as a discipline is the data, is the analytics, is the predictability, which has now matured into algorithms and artificial intelligence and really, really rich, complicated ways where you can influence people and change customers' minds. The third pillar, I would say, is more around being comfortable with technology in general. So we talked about tools earlier, but it's also understanding what capabilities of certain technologies are, right? Well, one of the common things that people talk about is, having Salesforce installed in their organizations. Salesforce is like a Ferrari, right? But like maybe you're not ready to drive the Ferrari yet, right? So it's kind of thinking about what are all the different technology tools that your company might be using and how that interacts with each other, right? Because let's say what I'm doing currently at Unilever, which is people relationship management, or really it's CRM, but that interacts with so many different systems. And if those systems are not seamlessly talking to each other, it actually has a lot of different ripple effects in terms of being able to perform multiple functions seamlessly, right? So the technology space is super important. And then maybe the fourth pillar I'd say, which is really important from a leadership growth perspective, is customer centricity. So there's two ways to think about that. The first one is obviously external. So thinking about your customers first and making sure that they have the best experience possible. And this is where, as a digital marketer, you're thinking about the entire customer journey and what that means, from taking the consumer from point A to point B, ultimately from awareness to sales, right? That's the funnel that you're focusing on. And then theoretically, loyalty comes after that. But there's the second customer centricity, which is your internal customers. So as marketing has evolved over time, you've got multiple different stakeholders that you're working on, from your sales team to your IT team to your legal team to your, the security. So there's so many different spokes that the marketing team is kind of involved with internally. And so having that mindset of also being able to sell the story that you need to in order to drive that function forward. So maybe at a high level, those four pillars would be very critical in terms of growing as a leader and making yourself, more resourceful within the organization.
Sounds good. So what I took from that is if you want to advance to kind of a leadership role in the digital marketing space, then you need to take a look at strategy and vision, and hopefully at the higher levels, you're the one setting that strategy. You're the one setting the vision. Exactly. and not just taking someone's vision and making it a reality. You're able to kind of figure, okay, where do I want to go? As I think Wayne Gretzky said, like skate to where the puck is going, not where it is, that sort of thing. And that would be some important things to cultivate in yourself. And there's probably a ton of exercises you can do. Maybe there's courses you can take. Maybe there's YouTube videos you can watch as well. But how to shore up that probably is a whole episode on its own. And then you mentioned data analytics, right? So hopefully you would have worked with the data before, so that you can be the one making insights to, and providing recommendations on that. Exactly. And moving in the appropriate direction. And you have to be aware of technology. And to your point, you don't necessarily have to start with a Ferrari. Maybe you start with like a Honda and then work your way up, and then be able to evolve and learn it, because things are so dynamic and changing that what's relevant today might not be relevant tomorrow, and you always have to keep up from a tech perspective. And I like what you said about the last one, the customer centricity, where again, it's the whole journey, not just like get into buy, because that's what people often think marketing is. It's closely associated with sales, but it's that plus the follow on, the loyalty afterwards, and then it's holistic, where it's not just your traditional customers, it's the internal folks, right? So and I assume when you speak about that, it's also like your employees, your vendors, and everyone that touches as well, and have them kind of be on board with it. So it sounds like a lot of great things to progress and to consider as you get into digital marketing, as you evolve into a leader in digital marketing, and as you go into kind of your digital marketing path. So a lot of great insights and wisdom from there. So thanks so much, Narsingh, for sharing. Are there any kind of last minute words of wisdom that you'd want to share for folks that are looking to start their journey, or maybe they're midway in their journey, or a little later in their journey to digital marketing leadership?
Yeah, maybe the last thing I'll end off with is it's a really exciting era when we think of how technology has shaped the world. We're not stopping. There's still exponential growth happening. Web3 is one of the things that's being heavily talked about right now. But again, that's going to impact the way we go to market, how we relate to consumers, how we communicate to consumers. So I think the exciting time is now. It's a new era. We're heading into a completely new place. One concept that we talk a lot about at Unilever, for example, is digital commerce, right? So we've actually restructured our digital hubs to now become digital commerce hubs because we've realized that where you had Instagram that was like a brand building tool, but now you've got commerce built into it, and you've got Amazon that was a commerce tool, and now you've got brand building built into it. And so you're seeing this convergence of media, entertainment, and commerce happen very quickly, and that's one of the reasons why we've kind of evolved our thinking that the consumer journey is going to continue changing at this very, very quick pace. So I think it's a very exciting time to be in marketing. I think it's a very exciting time to be in digital in particular, within the marketing realm. And I think it's going to be the key driving force of how we relate to consumers, but also most importantly, drive business strategy moving forward.
Sounds good. And what I took from that is, as mature as marketing might seem, where they have all these tools and processes and things like that, because it's evolving so fast that things are changing, and that maturity kind of dwindles as new things, resets, as new platforms are there, new areas, and then convergences, probably divergences at some point in the future or whatever, and it makes it exciting. It's probably not a good place for folks that would just want to sit and relax and not learn on a regular basis, but for those that want to challenge themselves and grow into kind of new technology, new processes, and new areas in industry and stuff like that, it sounds like an exciting place to be.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. So thanks so much, Narsingh, for sharing your insights in how to become a leader in digital marketing, and hopefully we'll have you back in a future episode.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me, Luki.
Thanks for joining us on the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Lukidanu, Lukidanu, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.